professions aren't dedicated healers, DPS, or tanks because, frankly, we built a combat system that doesn't allow it. Due to a diverse skill system allowing for a multitude of vastly different character builds, every profession in Guild Wars 2 is capable of fitting each of the combat roles, damage, support, and control, or are sometimes even the result of a combination of them. Hey everybody, it's rather apparent that the idea of a Trinity is still, after 3 years of developer comments and gameplay, a hotly contested idea on the forums. Many players clearly do not understand that there are no quote-unquote dedicated roles in Guild Wars 2. There are roles, but the roles are expected to be shared among the members of the party. People seem to understand that the roles that ArenaNet has expressed, damage, support, and control, do exist, but they don't seem to understand that players are not expected to specialize in any one aspect at the expense of the others. A PvE build that focuses on one aspect of these roles is doomed to failure, as it will not offer its group enough to pull its own weight. Most people agree that the developers never intended a player to have to say, "I am playing a tank or a healer," because the developer statements explicitly say that those things are not part of the combat system. What some people do not seem to understand is that the combat roles that do exist are not intended to be single-minded pursuits. Every profession is expected to contribute all 3 roles, damage, support, and control, in varying degrees. This brings us to the PvP meta, or PvE meta as it stands today. The generally accepted meta team composition is double Ellie, Warrior, Thief, and Guardian. This is a composition that takes advantage of several synergies to fulfill all the combat roles outlined by the developers in a way that maximizes damage, support, and control. What I'm going to do is go through each role and demonstrate how this team composition utilizes the 3 roles to create maximum efficiencies, and I'll give examples of each in action. Alright, so the first role is damage. Damage is by far the easiest to understand of the concepts of the soft Trinity in Guild Wars 2. In fact, among a lot of the more ignorant people who don't understand the nuances of the combat system, damage is considered the only role. After all, they say, if characters are expected to contribute DPS, then all characters are by definition DPS characters. However, in organized groups, there's a lot more happening than all the characters in the group wearing berserker gear and mashing buttons on their keyboard until the boss dies. Offensive support is the biggest key to efficiency. If you add up all the bonus stats from each of the party buffs together, you're essentially adding 2 more unbuffed players' worth of offense to your party. The foremost thing that all these groups have in common is at least one elementalist with the trait Persisting Flames. Persisting Flames combined with blast finishers ensures the team will have Fury 100% of the time in every battle. Additionally, the party possesses enough blast finishers to achieve and maintain 25 stacks of might. These buffs together give the full party 100% Fury uptime, as well as an additional 3,750 power, which is far more than the base unbuffed power of any single player. Next, you have the Warrior in the group, who brings Banner of Discipline and Banner of Strength. These add 170 power, precision, and ferocity to each member of the party. These 2 banners increase the team DPS by nearly 25%. Lastly, an overlooked addition is Stacks of Vulnerability. Vulnerability is potentially a 25% damage increase to the entire party, and is essential to achieving maximum DPS. It should be stated that no single member of the party is capable of contributing this DPS by themselves. As a result, the build of each party member is adjusted in ways which sacrifice personal DPS to add vulnerability. This is a key point I will return to again. None of the so-called meta builds are the absolute highest DPS individual builds possible. Every meta build sacrifices something for support or control. In this case, some of the builds give away as much as 10% of their personal DPS to increase the entire group's DPS with additional vulnerability stacks. The Warrior brings Rending Strikes, the Thief brings Sundering Strikes, the Elementalist brings Weak Spot, and the Guardian brings Blind Exposure. Together, these traits enable the team to maintain a very high amount of vulnerability stacks. When all these buffs come together, the overall DPS is enormously higher than 5 characters if they were simply focusing on their own individual DPS, and the results are far more than they'd be able to achieve as 5 characters acting independently. So up next, I'm going to show you a short clip of what a full party DPS team looks like that are trying to maximize. So in this clip, we see a team generating 25 might, 25 vulnerability stacks, and utilizing both warrior banners to ensure that the boss dies in a very short amount of time. So support, also known as defensive support, is a huge facet of PvE in Guild Wars 2. I would argue that it isn't the amazing DPS that defines the PvE meta, it's the support. Since utility skills and builds can be changed on the fly, groups should always have access to the skills and traits they need to solve any particular encounter. Having the correct utility skills and traits for each encounter is one of the characteristics that defines an experienced player. The difference between a Guardian who knows when to use Wall of Reflect and one who does not is huge. And rather than being a matter of twitch skill or reaction time, it comes down to simple encounter knowledge. So I'm going to go over the different types of defensive support that each team brings and give you a brief example of each. The first up is Reflections. Enemy projectiles are incredibly powerful, and undefended they will shred a glass cannon team in short order. For bosses who only have projectile attacks, reflection skills are basically invulnerability buttons for the entire party. The Guardian can bring a significant amount of projectile defense with Wall of Reflection and Shield of Avenger. The Elementalist can use Swirling Winds, and then the Thief can bring Smokescreen for additional defense. Between these skills, an organized team is defended for well over 100% of projectile attacks. And I'll show a short clip of the projectile attacks in action. So in this clip, the boss we're fighting, Alphard's attacks consist exclusively of projectiles. I'm playing Guardian, and the Guardian will use Wall of Reflect and Shield of the Avenger in order to completely protect the party from his Alphard's attacks. As you'll see, the people don't generally take any damage and are immune to Alphard's pulls, and the attacks that I reflect go and hit him for significant damage. It bears repeating how powerful this effect is and how useful the defensive support of the reflects are. Another thing that people look for as defensive support is condition removal. Conditions are not terribly overpowered on enemy mobs, as very few bosses actually are primarily condition damage oriented. That doesn't mean that conditions aren't a problem though. Snare conditions that enemy mobs use can be deadly when doing a trash run, and it's important for those conditions to be removed in short order. The Elementalist, Guardian, Thief, and Warrior all have easy access to all-purpose condition removal or anti-snare removal. However, there are a few bosses where their condition damage is quite significant, and you do have to support your team with defensive support. And I'll show you a quick example of a boss fight like that. In this clip, both the Guardian and the Thief use their condition removal in order to keep the party cleansed and alive while fighting the boss who has a significant amount of condition damage. Had these conditions not been cleansed, the party would have wiped in short order. And lastly, in terms of support, I want to talk about stealth. Stealth allows a team to run past the most difficult trash mob packs that would be deadly or time-consuming to fight. More so than anything else, it is easy access to stealth that ensures the Thief, and to a lesser extent the Engineer, a place in the meta team composition. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video clip of a Thief using his stealth abilities for a team to make a dangerous trash run that would otherwise be time-consuming and or dangerous to fight. In this clip, the thief will drop a black powder field, and the rest of the group and the thief will do some blasts in it to give the group enough stealth to pass by the very dangerous elite wolves as well as the elite husks. These mobs would be either dangerous to fight or extremely time-consuming to spend the time to kill. Alright, so the next role that I want to discuss in Guild Wars 2 is control. More than damage or support, control is the aspect of the Guild Wars 2 Trinity that many players don't believe exists. I have a video series on my channel demonstrating examples of control being used throughout the game. However, people who have never been in an organized group that coordinate to manage to find stacks on bosses rarely understand how valuable doing so is to groups. The problem is that ArenaNet did not design any encounter where control is pass or fail. There are simply no bosses that must be interrupted in order to be defeated. As a result, many players ignore the mechanics that can or should be interrupted since the interrupt isn't strictly required. This will lead many people to believe that interrupts in CC are irrelevant. However, much like DPS buffs, well-managed CC will make runs faster and smoother. You don't need to stack might and have warrior banners, but they do help make your runs faster and smoother, and that's simply what CC does as well. You don't need to interrupt the key boss mechanics, but it does help. There are several types of control that teams use to great effects, and I'll go over them now individually. The first is repositioning mobs. Teams will look to reposition mobs for a variety of tactical reasons. The most commonly used way of repositioning mobs is with the Guardian skill Binding Blades to get several spread apart enemies to become balled up into a clump, allowing them to be cleaved or killed with AoE. Cleaving multiple enemies down with AoE attacks is far more efficient than fighting them individually. Additionally, a team might reposition a mob to fight in a more advantageous location, which can be the difference between a fast and easy kill or an extremely challenging kill. Mesmer with Temporal Curtain is also very good at this particular maneuver. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video of a Mesmer using Temporal Curtain to move mobs in a way that makes the group able to kill them very quickly. In this clip, the Mesmer is going to pull the mobs to the right turret, enabling the team to cleave down both mobs and the turret simultaneously, which will shorten the fight and make it easier for the team at the same time. This is a great example of using CC to reposition mobs to the team's advantage. The next bit of control that people use is blinds. Blinds from the Thief, Guardian, and Elementalist can completely disable otherwise deadly packs of trash mobs. Unlike bosses with long wind-up telegraphed attacks, packs of trash mobs, just by virtue of their number, attack many, many times, and it's impossible to avoid, to dodge, or block all the attacks. Thus, the best solution to defeating them is to proactively blind them, and as a result, the Thief is the king of this ability. Additionally, the Thief, the Elementalists can, with their Glyph of Storms, use the Earth version to create a blind field that is extremely powerful. And I'm going to show you guys a video of a team pulling the toughest group of trash mobs in the game and killing them with relative ease thanks to blinds. So in this clip, the team will use a line of sight to gather up all the trash mobs in this room in one spot. And then when they're in the one spot, the Elementalist will use the glyph to generate a smoke field, as well as the Thief putting down black powder, so that all of these mobs are permanently blind, and the team can use their AoE abilities to quickly burst down all the mobs and take care of them effortlessly and with no danger. And so the next I've touched on already is interrupting key attacks, which is an important facet of control. Most players understand this, but the problem is that few players are ever in experienced groups that are coordinated enough to control a boss's define stacks and shut down his key attacks. This leads people to believe that interrupting key attacks is not important. It is important, just people don't try hard enough to make it happen. A thief is able to use headshot to ensure that a boss never has defiant stacks and can be interrupted as needed. I'm going to show a video of a party and the thief managing the defiant stacks on the boss to ensure that his important attack is interrupted, which allows for a smooth and easy kill. In this clip, the Abomination will come over and the team will begin to DPS it. You'll see the Abomination will begin its Enrage attack, and the Thief will interrupt it using Basilisk Venom. After interrupting with Basilisk Venom, the Thief will manage over voice comm the Defiant stacks to make sure that the team removes only just enough to leave the boss with 0 Defiant stacks. If the boss manages to go into his Enrage attack again, before it dies, the Thief would be ready to interrupt it and make sure the boss does not get the Enrage buff. When most players think of the control role, they think of a player whose build is designed to chain CC in order to lock down a boss, which would be a traditional Trinity game, or the traditional Trinity role of a control player. Guild Wars 2 does not have such a simplistic combat mechanic. However, disabling a boss with CC is a core mechanic of the meta, and it's through the use of Deep Freeze from Conjure Icebow. The 5 seconds of boss disabling is a huge amount of time where the team can freely DPS without having to worry about the boss's attacks. Combined with a thief using headshot, Deep Freeze can be done back to back to ensure a huge duration of boss lockdown. Especially in low-level dungeons, the bosses can often be killed in the space of 1 Deep Freeze, making CC an incredibly valuable tool of an organized team. So up next, I'm going to show you guys a quick video of a team using the CC role to lock down a boss and enable a quick kill. In this clip, the team will use Deep Freeze, the Icebow skill, in order to lock the boss down for 5 seconds. During this 5-second period, the team will be able to unload all its DPS skills in order to reduce the boss to 0 health quickly. This will enable the team to get a clean and effortless kill without having to worry about an otherwise extremely dangerous boss and its attacks. Alright, so this is the Guild Wars 2 Trinity in a nutshell: damage, support, and control. Each member of the meta team composition is designed in order to maximize their contribution to each. As I've shown here, there are synergies and redundancies built into the team composition that allows teams to maximize their potential with the minimum amount of potential mistakes made. Hopefully this video does 2 things. First, I wanted to definitively explain how all 3 combat rules that ArenaNet designed are fundamental to the game experience and to overcome the oceans of ignorance that we regularly see on this topic. I hope in this regard that it changes the perceptions and opinions of people who believe that the combat system, as opposed to the boss mechanics themselves, lack depth, and it grants people a greater appreciation for the game as designed and implemented. This would perhaps explain to them why people react so fiercely in defense of the game design and oppose ideas to implement a traditional Trinity or anything of the sort. The second thing I wanted to do with this video is to create something of a primer to explain why the meta team composition is what it is. To explain why the 4 professions that make up the core of the team are what they are and how they fit together within the framework of ArenaNet's game design. None of these professions are absolutely essential to completing a dungeon, and their roles can actually be performed by other professions. However, viewers will hopefully have a better understanding of why this particular party composition is considered the standard. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will do my best to answer them. Thanks again for watching.